Hello everybody, Mike, aka the Magico13, here with episode 5 of my, as you may have noticed, moderately buttered KSP Let's Play. Yes, I have added a couple more mods, and as this is the first one in my first video in 0.21, we have to make a new world. So yeah, I've added, as I've mentioned in the last episode, I've added KW Rocketry, H.O.M.E, Deadly Reentry, RemoteTech, and Ioncross. So what we're doing today is we are going to be setting up a communications network for RemoteTech, because we can't do anything with probes if we can't communicate with them. So we're going to set up a Kerbal synchronous, or almost Kerbal synchronous, satellite network. Ideally with 4 satellites. The ideal configuration would be to put them 90 degrees apart from each other. But I've never actually done this successfully. So here we have Bob Kerman going for the first test. The reason I'm reverting is because the satellite dishes fell off after opening, which is what I expected. So this time we are not opening them, we're just going as is. We don't need a communications network right now to be able to fly this mission, because we are using we have a Kerbal here, and for some reason I decided to deploy these, and it actually doesn't cause any issues, which is kind of nice, even though those parts are completely clipping into the other ones. But yeah, so Bob Kerman is here. This is the only reason we're doing a manned mission right now, is because if we lose contact with Kerbal, we lose control of our ship. But with a manned mission, you don't. If you lose contact with Kerbal, it doesn't matter, because it can still be piloted manually. And mission failure. It started turning. I decided this isn't really going to work anyway. Decided to stage. Everything blew up. We actually lost a whole satellite. Let's just keep going. I wanted originally to just blast those 3 off, but forgot that the staging is set up to have that last. So yes, we deploy our parachute and descend back, and Bob Kerbal makes it down successfully. You'll notice here we have Jebediah Kerman. That's because when you revert to the VAB, well, not revert, I don't think I actually reverted this, but when you return to the VAB and go to launch a ship again, it will always give you Jeb if he's available. So you have to manually switch it out. And I wanted to use Bob because Bob is often the one who gets left behind when a 2-man lander is landing on a body, but a 3-man capsule is sent. So he's the guy left behind in orbit watching everything, and if you read the Grand Tour, I can't remember the name of it right now. The IMV Proteus is the name of the ship. It is an after-action report available on the forums. It was actually August's forum thread of the month. I highly suggest you guys check that out, but yes, so in that story, spoiler alert, Bob is very unhappy about the fact that he didn't get to land on the moon, and I don't really want the same sort of thing happening in my space program, so I was going to have Bob do this first mission, but instead Jebediah was like, get out of here, I want to do this mission, you messed it up last time. So Jeb will actually be following through on this mission, and we will have to send Bob on a different mission. So here I'm just burning up to, getting my apoapsis up to 2868. The actual Kerbal synchronous orbit is at 2868.75 kilometers. Yes. Yeah, 2,868.75 kilometers, also known as 2,868,750 meters. I'm just getting it close and setting up the maneuver node for the full burn. Here we are at the maneuver node, about to start this burn. It's only going to be like a 45-second burn. I think I'm still using... no, I am now using the maneuvering, the orbital maneuvering stage. The lift stage, I think, almost made it to full orbit. It got fairly close. And this will actually be enough fuel to get us pretty much everywhere. So now I'm preparing this first satellite to be released. And what we're going to do is we're going to release a satellite, lower our orbital period. As you'll see right now, it is nearly 6 hours, and a Kerbal day is 6 hours. So that means our whole orbit will take 6 hours to complete, but since Kerbal is rotating at that same rate, we'll always be in the same spot in the sky. And so that means if we are in the sky above mission control, that satellite will always be in contact. And then the other satellites will still be able to see that one that's in contact, and they'll all stay in contact then through a relay network. So now we've released our first satellite, and you'll see here this thing on the left. And some of you are probably like, hey, that looks a lot like MechJeb. And no, we are not using MechJeb. However, RemoteTech has remote control for probe bodies. And so it uses the MechJeb core instead of rewriting everything. So in a way, we are using MechJeb, but this is actually just the core orbital maneuvering portion of it. And this is actually called the flight computer in RemoteTech. And you can actually program burns to happen at a later time, including when you're out of contact with mission control. Now that won't be an issue now, but if we were to, say, go to another planet or even go to the dark side of the moon, which as we all know isn't actually dark, it's just the other side of the moon, which if you don't know already, the moon is tidally locked with Earth, and the moon is tidally locked with Kerbal. So one side of the moon is always facing us, and the other side is always pointed away. That's why when you look up at the moon, you always see the man on the moon. If it wasn't tidally locked, you wouldn't. Sometimes it would be behind. And so you'd be seeing what we effectively call the dark side of the moon, which sees just as much light as the normal side. It's just we don't see it, ever. It's kind of cool because there's a lot of craters there, and the very first time we ever saw it was during the Apollo missions. So yes, so as you see, we are ahead of that satellite that we placed last time, but we're not very far ahead. And I didn't think to lower my orbital period to, since we have 4 of these and that was 6 hours, we would want to lower it at the very least 2 hours so that we'd be down to a 4-hour period. That'll actually do it in thirds instead of fourths, but I don't feel like doing 6 divided by 4, even though it's 1 2/3, right? No. Silly me. It's 1.5. Wow. Sorry about that. So yes, so this is what happens when you don't have a probe in contact with Kerbal. You can't control it. And I just released that satellite without actually activating any of the dishes or anything, so it is completely out of control and just floating through space now. So we're going to send Jeb up and see if Jeb can maybe hack into it and at the very least open up the solar panels to make sure it's still getting energy, even though it has an RTG. And maybe there's something in RemoteTech that will let us point those dishes in a different direction. As you can see, we can't even extend the panels when it's out of control, which is kind of awful. But here's this awesome jack in button. So this is the antenna configuration. You've seen it a couple times now. And that's actually how you choose where the dishes should point, because there are two types of communication. There are dishes and there are omnidirectional antenna. The omnidirectional antenna are very passive. You don't have to point them anywhere. So you just have to have them open. And unfortunately, we don't have the one open on this. The dishes have to be pointed at a specific either ship, planet, or mission control. But for whatever reason, and I think it's because I hadn't activated the dishes, pointing them somewhere else doesn't actually fix the issue we're having. That probe, well, that satellite is still just floating through space. So I decide, okay, well, let's do another one, but let's make sure this one has everything open before we release it. And unfortunately, I can't actually see if it's got a connection because we're still attached to it or something. I'm not really sure why. Mission control is that red dot, and as you can see, well, actually, the issue could be that that first satellite might not be in control, except that it had to have been because we were turning it around earlier. So hopefully I have it pointed at the right place. I think I set the target on this other dish, one of these other dishes at least, to the other satellite delivery 1 probe, just to make sure I have one of them right. And they don't actually have to point in physical space towards the other ship. They just have to be targeted towards it. So yes, I'm making sure these ones are all activated because I don't want to have to rescue 2 of these. And yes, that is actually something we are going to be doing in a later episode, is rescuing that satellite that we left floating. We're going to hopefully be doing that using the Kerbal attachment system. But I haven't tested it yet, but we should be able to use the grappling hook to just grab onto it and then dock with it to enable those antennas. So yeah, so this yellow line is the line of control. As you can see, we are contacting the other satellite, and then that is contacting mission control, and messages are sent along that yellow path. The longer that path, the longer the delay, which the delay is listed in seconds up in the top left corner under the mission time. Which unfortunately the image that you're seeing right now is just displaying local control because we are on the delivery ship, which is under control by Jebediah, and he is local to the ship and controlling it, hence local control. But when we switch to this new satellite that I just launched, and yeah, the funny thing is now that we have no antenna on this, we lose the remote control aspect. But yes, as you see now, we have a delay of 0.097441 seconds, and there is far too much precision in that number. I hope they actually just reduce it down to like 0.01 precision, because knowing that many decimal points is not in the slightest bit useful. So now that we have successfully delivered 3 satellites and unsuccessfully delivered a 4th, we are going to return to Kerbin because we don't want Jebediah up here in orbit any longer than he needs to be. So here we are. We decouple, but there's a problem. I can't control it. And you'll notice life support status warning, electric charge levels. We have 0 electric charge, so I cannot actually deploy the satellite, or the parachute. So here we are, and our parachute explodes. Yeah, this is a quick loaded back. Our parachute exploded. That's not really useful. So here, we're gonna try again for another aero braking. This time, tail first. So if our engine explodes, no big deal. We're already on a trajectory to eventually be captured. Ideally, we won't run out of electric charge or oxygen by then, but you never know. So we are pointing retrograde, and we are actually now leaving the atmosphere again. But as you can see, we've brought our apoapsis down, and we're just going to turn around again and just keep doing this gradually, because with deadly reentry, you can't just come slamming into the atmosphere at nearly 3 kilometers per second without any potential negative side effects, such as parachute explosions. I do love that everything, absolutely everything in this game explodes. And there we just sped really quickly around in orbit. And now it's getting kind of hard to control. We're getting deeper into the atmosphere. 39 kilometers going back up. I believe we have 1 more orbit we need to complete until we're all the way captured. So once we get out of the atmosphere, we warp up again, come back around, and luckily we're landing on the day side, which just happened to be a coincidence from where I decided to reduce the periapsis. The periapsis was going to end up on the day side. So yeah, we're flipping around again. I'm bringing down the time warp to see if I can get a bit more control, because I want to go tail first for as long as possible, but the aerodynamics want us to go face first, as you can see, because that's a bit more streamlined. And so we've just passed our apoapsis, and we are now decreasing. So yes, we are fully captured now. We're at 34 kilometers. The atmosphere is about to get really dense, and we can't turn this around. So if our parachute explodes again, or our capsule explodes, or anything like that, we are going to have some trouble. And as you can see, our parachute is overheating now from atmospheric effects, but we just keep spinning, and it's all right. I've got the parachute set up to go next because we're still going to be out of electric charge when I decouple this, so I need to have the parachute out first. And if we're going face first, or I guess I should say capsule first, face first seems a little crude, but if we're going capsule first, when the parachute opens, we might just get ripped. It might just get ripped off, or we might get pulled through the center stack or something like that. And you can see those atmospheric effects building. If I had clicked on the engine, you would see its temperature increasing to hundreds of degrees Celsius. But the engines are pretty hardy, and they can handle this abuse. And like I said before, we don't need it. We're going to release the parachute and then decouple. Maybe, unless our parachute explodes. We've now flipped around during the worst time, but by just spinning wildly, we've managed to shift some of that heat to the later portions of our stack. And the parachute managed to survive. We're now less than 1 kilometer per second, still going Mach 3, I think. And as we get closer to Mach 2 and Mach 1, you'll actually see the Mach effects starting up. Just, yep, right there. Those, I believe, with Deadly Reentry are speed-based and no longer altitude-based. So you won't get reentry effects. Okay, parachute, boom! Center stack exploded, but the capsule is still alive. Jebediah Kerman is loving this in ways that only Jebediah Kerman can. But yeah, so I don't remember what I was talking about. The capsule, something. Oh yeah, Mach effects. You won't get re-entry effects flying an airplane at 20,000 kilometers. Well, no, you'll get something flying an airplane at 20,000 kilometers. You'd be in space. You don't get re-entry effects when flying an airplane at 20 kilometers anymore. You would only get the Mach effects, like it should be. For whatever reason, the current system uses an altitude-based thing for determining Mach effects versus re-entry effects. So you can see those 3 lines are the network we have, and we'll actually look at that later. There's some things that I want to change about our communication network, but we have a successful landing. Jebediah Kerman, the very first astronaut, Kerbonaut in space in our 0.21 save. Successfully returned after 2 failed attempts two failed simulations, we should say. So yeah, here is the final outcome. We've got these 3 lines with these 3 satellites, and then the 4th satellite, currently near the 3rd one, that is just useless. And we've landed on the complete opposite side of Kerbin from the Kerbal Space Center. But yes, that hole right there and this hole I would like to fill in, but mainly this one. And that is what we are actually going to do next time. So look forward to that. I already have it filmed. It should be out soon. Thank you all for watching. I'm Mike, aka the Magico13. Goodbye.